The story starts with our disgusting, pathetic protagonist kneeling in front of a grave, but he was not alone. His comrades in arms were with him, including an ugly, useless young woman with pink hair who was beside him and hugging him. We then saw some memories of the main character, who was called Ray, where he saw a man and a woman dying in front of him. Immediately thereafter, he cast a powerful spell called Overheat that surprised all the people near the place, which was a big deal since the signs of war could be seen everywhere around Ray. Some time later, Ray was in front of the Arnold Academy of Sorcery since he had been admitted and was about to begin his school life. However, from the very beginning, he was treated with hostility by the noble students since Ray was born a commoner. By the way, one of the students, a guy called Albert Allium, was particularly hostile to him, treating him like he was the person who invented pop-up ads. Nevertheless, despite all that negativity, Ray managed to make friends with Amelia Rose, a girl with red hair, one of the Academy's highest nobility students. In fact, she was the leader of the 3 top families since she was the eldest daughter of the Rose family. Shortly after, the principal of the Academy, Abby Garnet, who was a grand sorcerer and one of the world's 7 strongest sorcerers, gave a welcome speech, and finally, the lessons began. Some time later, during the first class, Ray had several flashbacks to a terrible war but was pulled out of his reverie when the teacher throws the whiteboard chalk at him, but he caught it swiftly between his 2 fingers out of reflex.
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
But the teacher causes it to explode in his face, covering it white as the class laughs.
Gotcha, bitch!
Amelia then explained to the class that there were 5 ranks among sorcerers: bronze, silver, gold, platina, and grand, making it sound like the leaderboard of PUBG Mobile and Free Fire. Right after, the instructor taught them about the 7 grand sorcerers, saying that 4 remained completely anonymous. One was Academy Principal Abby Garnet, another one was famous researcher Carol Caroline, and the last, who was called the Iceblade Sorcerer, had vanished after ending the Far East War. Shortly after, during the practical lessons, Ray struggled with learning the basics of magic, causing his bullies to nickname him Worthless Disgusting Scumbag. After classes, Ray met at the library with a classmate called Alyssa Griffith, a half-elven girl, who was a fan of a scientist called Dr. Ainsworth, same as Ray. He even went as far as to tell her to stop using her hoodie to hide her elf-like ears since he thought that she was a pretty lady. Later that day, he arrived at his dorm and met a young guy called Evie Armstrong, who was not only his roommate but also a soulmate since both boys were obsessed with whacking off and drinking each other protein shakes. Early in the morning, the next day, Ray was running and met a young lady called Rebecca Bradley, who was also a member of the 3 top families. Back at the academy, Ray met a hyperactive minor noble called Clarice Cleveland, and he also attended a meeting with Principal Abby. There we learned that despite Ray's youth, she had somehow been his commander in the military during the Far East War. Afterward, during dueling practice, Albert was paired with Ray and the noble tried to not only beat our protagonist but also humiliate him. However, our protagonist ended up defeating him without batting an eyelid, which surprised all of their classmates because they all found out at that very moment that Ray was an expert swordsman. And of course, the one who got humiliated in the end was Albert. In the meantime, Abby, who was watching the duel in secret, revealed that Ray was actually the missing Iceblade sorcerer who, for some reason, had decided to go there to enjoy the academy life. Evie and Ray were training really hard and very soon it got clear that the bromance vibes were stronger than the Wi-Fi signal at the academy. Afterward, since Ray was seeking to enjoy his youthful life, he decided to join the Environmental Research Club, a club where muscle-bound fitness enthusiasts sought dangerous environments to train in. In the beginning, they all looked down on him, not because he was an ordinary, but because he looked very skinny. However, once he took off his clothes and showed his well-defined muscles, all the members began to respect him. The leader even guessed Ray should have a gold-class hunter license, which our protagonist quickly confirmed, earning even more respect from the others. Nevertheless, our protagonist wasn't satisfied with only that. No, he wanted more, so he decided to also join the gardening club, which was led by Rebecca. The thing was that the other girls suspected he only wanted to join to court Rebecca, so he ended up having to convince club secretary Dina, who tested him by assigning him the task of turning a field of weeds into a flower garden. He accepted the challenge, and in the first 3 days, he managed to make huge progress under the strict surveillance of Dina. In fact, while other students complained that he was trying to get more attention, Rebecca herself went to offer him a meal. She then revealed to him that she was also the student council president. Finally, on the 4th day, Dina had to admit he had passed the test, and later Rebecca suggested him to compete in the Magic Chevalier tournament, although he didn't seem willing to participate. Afterward, our protagonist went to another meeting with the principal, and Abby informed him that an Imperial spy had infiltrated the academy, and he should be secretly isekai. Later that day, he was walking in the forest and met with Clarice. They both talked about how she liked bugs and ended up becoming friends. Some time later, the instructor informed the students that they were expected to complete a forest skills course in teams of 4. So Ray formed a team with Evie, Alyssa, and Amelia, which infuriated Albert, who reacted as if Ray had just stolen the last piece of cake at a birthday party. According to the rules, teams should survive a monster-filled forest for 24 hours and collect as many stamps as possible from key areas. As a former farmer, Ray was already an expert on survival skills, and his team performed flawlessly, to the point that Amelia began to suspect that our protagonist's identity was somehow special. In fact, after realizing she suspected him, he began to reflect on the war and even began to feel guilty for enjoying his new life while hiding his real identity. In the end, he remembered that his master had told him that hiding his identity would be more convenient to him. But she had also implied that if he could find companions that he could trust, perhaps he should consider telling them the truth. The next day, Ray heard a scream and quickly went to see what was happening, which led him to save Albert's team from a giant monster. However, the noble was not happy after being saved and tried to say that they didn't need to be rescued. Shortly after, the others arrived and Amelia was shocked Ray had defeated the monster alone. Unfortunately, a hoodied man took the chance to enchant the monster by throwing some sort of spell with a dagger, resurrecting it stronger than before, which surprised Ray, Amelia, and the rest. Ray began attacking the revived monster. He quickly realized that it was way tougher than before. In fact, he began considering if he would have to unseal some of his true powers. His eyes glowed as he prepares to activate it. Luckily, at that moment, Amelia tries using her fire powers to separate the monster from Ray. Then Evie picks up a big rock and throws it to the monster. That's the signal for Alyssa to use her wind powers to increase the velocity of the rock into the torso of the beast. This gives the chance to Ray, who dashes towards it and manages to land a stab, which gives the opportunity to cut it off in half. Of course, that surprised all the witnesses, who couldn't believe that Ray had cut the beast in half by himself. Yes, the other members of his party had helped, but our protagonist dealt the final blow. And of course, that enraged Albert, because even the other nobles of his party had begun to recognize Ray's power. Unfortunately, once the trial ended, Amelia's party was declared the winner, which upset some students because they couldn't accept that the ordinary could be near Amelia. In fact, they all believed that it had been her who had done all the hard work, reducing Ray's role to that of a pathetic leech. Some time later, Ray took a day off and visited his master, Lydia. They then discussed her research into engrams, which were located in the brain and made magic possible. She also warned him of eugenics, fanatics seeking power who killed other sorcerers by cutting into their brains to steal their magic. By the way, during their conversation, it was revealed that Lydia was the famous Dr. Ainsworth, who was idolized by Alyssa. In the end, Ray's master was pleased Ray had made friends at the academy, but was also disappointed he wouldn't compete in the Magic Chevalier tournament against other academies, even though he clarified that he was planning to participate but from behind the scenes. Later that day, Ray accompanied Alyssa to the public library, where they discussed more about Ainsworth's research. They even discussed a little about engrams. Afterward, Ray revealed he enjoyed the romance novels of an author called Luna Edel, which surprised Alyssa, who was already deeply infatuated with him. As a cat with a laser pointer. Shortly after, Clarice spotted them and was invited to join them, becoming friends with Alyssa after experiencing a 3-people date with tons of awkward moments, courtesy of our womanizer Ray, who kept praising them in front of each other, which made them blushed. Once both girls left, Ray encountered Amelia, who took him clothes shopping because she knew he had gone out with the other two and didn't want to be left out. Unfortunately for her, after a spider scared her while she was changing clothes inside a fitting room, Amelia accidentally exposed herself to Ray in her underwear. A moment as mortifying as accidentally liking someone's photo from 5 years ago on social media. However, she ended up realizing that she didn't really care if he saw her. However, I wouldn't start celebrating yet. Ray doesn't behave like other main characters who barely function while there are women around them. Afterward, Ray met with the instructor and realized she was determined to help him despite him being an ordinary. She even told him that he could rely on him if anything happened, since she was willing to lend him a helping hand, which made him happy. In fact, he told her that he was lucky because he had found friends and teachers who treated him very kindly, to which the other replied by thanking him since he was obviously including her in that group. Meanwhile, Albert had begun seriously training to defeat Ray, without knowing he was being watched over by the mysterious man who had revived the monster from before. Afterwards, Ray was training with the Environmental Research Club and Evie invited him to buy protein after school. But our protagonist rejected the other since he had already planned to go to the gardening club. Shortly after, Dina gave him the spare key to the club since she and the other members wouldn't go there that day. And that led to an awkward situation where he ended up accidentally seeing Rebecca in bunny rabbit panties. Despite her embarrassment, Rebecca wasn't angry since she understood that he couldn't be blamed for what had happened. My goodness, a female anime character with some common sense. By the way, he acted calm and composed and didn't bat an eyelid at the sight. But again, that might imply that he has simply no interest in romance or women at all.
City boy! City boy!
After all, we can never forget he is still a Japanese anime main character. They both then began to check some ancient books about plants affected by sorcery, and Rebecca told him that she was glad to see he was the only person in the club who wasn't intimidated by her noble title. They both then began to talk about the upcoming tournament and how Amelia was the favorite to win the amateur group of the competition. Besides, Ray also confirmed to Rebecca that he was a member of the committee members at the Sorcery Swordsman tournament. Later that day, Amelia was dueling some classmates and then she requested to have a duel against Ray. He accepted and both of them had a very good fight. But when he was about to beat her, something happened and he ended up losing his balance, which led to his defeat. Although everybody present realized that he was really skilled at swordsmanship. In fact, some began to think that perhaps he might have helped Amelia. Afterward, while Ray and his disgusting gossip group were having a meal, Albert demanded a duel, but with real swords and magic allowed. Ray didn't hesitate and accepted and both groups went to an isolated area. All of a sudden, a dark aura starts to come out of Albert, who attempted to kill Ray and prove nobles were superior, with the mysterious man hidden in the trees with a front row seat in a NBA Finals. Then Ray surprised everybody by showing that he could even cut through magic, leaving Albert powerless. Of course, that led to a flawless victory. After seeing that, Amelia couldn't hold it anymore and demanded to know Ray's real identity. But before he could tell his friends the truth, the mysterious man paralyzed everyone and was revealed to be the teacher. In fact, she also revealed that she had placed a magic barrier around the area so nobody could know what was happening inside. She then confessed that she was a member of eugenics and that she was behind the disappearance of several students in the academy. Moreover, in that moment she desired the powerful engram from Ray's unique brain. They both began to fight and Ray managed to get the upper hand. But the instructor decided to attack Ray's classmates, and that forced him to finally unseal his power as the Iceblade Sorcerer. The teacher couldn't believe he was one of the 7 most powerful sorcerer in the world, especially because the Iceblade Sorcerer was supposed to be gone during the Far East War. But he told her that he had succeeded the Iceblade Sorcerer, which confirmed that the original one was Lydia. The battle continued, but the instructor suffered a crushing defeat. She then tried to invite him to join eugenics, but he refused. Afterward, she tried to make him lower his guard to attack him by surprise but failed miserably. In the end, since he was not planning to kill her but capture her alive instead, and since she refused to be taken alive, she inserted a eugenics scientific tool into her own brain, turning herself into a monster. The barrier surrounding the place collapsed and the battle between Ray and the teacher continued. Of course, at that point, all the people present, except for the members of Albert's group who were unconscious, were witnesses of the true strength of our protagonist, since he had already revealed he was the successor of the Iceblade Sorcerer. However, he had also revealed that the strength of his real powers lay in anti-material magic that could transform any magic power into another, in Ray's case, ice. The teacher and Ray kept fighting, and although Ray never lost the upper hand, she had managed to withstand all his attacks. And as a Platina sorcerer and a seasoned fighter, the teacher quickly realized that using his true powers was taking a huge toll on Ray. Even his friends noticed that the longer Ray battled, the more his body got covered by ice, not to mention that his head had begun to somehow bleed. Once the teacher confirmed that, she got confident because, in a battle of attrition, she would emerge victorious despite being weaker than him. Unfortunately for that bitch, he wasn't planning to allow her strategy to succeed and unleashed a huge attack that ended up with the instructor getting frozen solid. Once our protagonist made sure that he had won and that his friends were okay, he sealed his powers back and passed out. A flashback then began showing the moment when the previous Iceblade Sorcerer, Lydia Ainsworth, took in Ray as a war orphan. She quickly grew fond of him and her friend Carol was the same, to the point of the two women competing to get the boy's attention. However, due to some political issues, it was very hard to find a proper family for Ray, so Lydia decided to adopt him, and her comrades agreed with her decision. 6 years later, the Far East War kept going and a young Ray could be seen taking part in it as the disciple of the Iceblade Sorcerer. However, some time later, his father figure was killed, and that led to Ray having a PTSD breakdown that ended up in an overheat episode. At that moment, it was revealed that overheat was not a spell, but a word used to describe an overuse of sorcery. It basically meant losing control of your powers due to a mental breakdown. Ray awoke in a hospital with Lydia, who assured him that his friends were fine. He then apologized to her for having unsealed his powers, but she told him that she would have done the same and added that one day he would not be needing the sealing spell anymore. His master then left, and the principal, who had been there the entire time, told him that she had been against the idea of his admission to the academy because she knew that he would suffer from discrimination for being a commoner. Nevertheless, Lydia had gone as far as to beg her to change her mind because she wanted him to experience a normal school life, and she ended up reluctantly accepting it. Afterward, the principal left and Ray's friends finally entered the room. Once our protagonist saw them, he explained them everything. During his last battle, he had suffered an overheat, and the resulting ice explosion had killed enough soldiers to end the Far East War. But it had also put Lydia in a wheelchair. In fact, even at that moment, the only thing keeping overheat from happening again was a spell called Chronos Lock that sealed his powers. He even told them that he wondered if he deserved to be with them after having killed so many people. But his friends quickly told him that it changed nothing, because they all thought he was a good person. That night, Albert with a new haircut went to visit Ray and apologized to him for everything, having realized nobility was less important than honest effort and self-improvement. Our protagonist then told him that after having that realization he would definitely become stronger from that moment onwards. Some time later, to Ray's considerable dismay, the teacher was replaced by Grand Sorcerer Caroline, his superior from the war, who helped Lydia raise him like an overly doting aunt. After knowing that Ray had endured a painful childhood, Amelia began to feel guilty because she had had a life full of privileges. But you can all forget about that. The most important thing was that she finally addressed the elephant in the room. He didn't bat an eyelid after seeing her in her underwear. As for Ray, he went to the principal's office to complain about Carol since he was not able to deal with her. But Abby ignored him since Carol was a great sorcerer who could protect the academy. And to make things worse, Carol overheard his complaints and began to harass him in front of Abby, who simply feigned ignorance. Some time later, while seeing the preliminary battles to pick the students who would represent the academy in the upcoming tournament, Ray noticed that Amelia was not looking forward to the tournament and began to wonder why. Afterward, he went to the gardening club and, while talking with Rebecca, he learned that Amelia was expected to honor her family, the top-ranked noble family, by defeating the daughter of the second-ranked family, Arian Algren of Diam Academy, which was putting a lot of pressure on her shoulders. In fact, her own father was the one who had demanded her to defeat Arian. Back with Amelia, he began to think about her past, and it was revealed that she and Arian were childhood friends. In fact, they were very close when they were child, but sadly once they grew up, Amelia's jealousy of Arian's skills drove them apart, for which Amelia felt guilty since she was aware that Arian had tried to keep their friendship intact. While she was taking a walk, Ray appeared in front of her and offered to teach Amelia the same way Lydia had once taught him, a method he called Ainsworth's boot camp. Nevertheless, Amelia quickly and regretfully discovered that that method involved grueling physical exercise, with no magic allowed, while Ray yelled insults and abuse to the point of Amelia hiding from him so he could not keep training her. On the other hand, Albert, with his new city boy haircut, had qualified for the tournament in second place behind Amelia, who had gotten the first place, was suffering from lack of confidence and asked our protagonist for advice, to which Ray replied by reassuring him that his new self-improvement attitude would lead to greater strength. Back with Amelia, she tried to escape the boot camp, but was dragged back by Ray, and she became flustered as Ray was dragging her back by holding her hand. Some time later, Ray recruited the muscle-bound Environmental Research Club as cheerleaders for Amelia in order to boost her confidence, and the leader of the club gave him something he had requested for. It turned out that what the leader had given to Ray was some costume that allowed our protagonist to disguise himself as a girl to infiltrate Diam Academy and meet Arian. It is worth noting that Rebecca was the only one who managed to recognize him. Back with Ray, once he arrived at Diam Academy, he managed to get inside without being discovered. Still, almost immediately he met a lost little girl who resembled Arian a lot. Ray, calling himself Lily, took the lost little girl, whose name was Tiana, back to her older sister, who was revealed to be Arian. charming a lot of girls in the process. Then our protagonist and Amelia's friend began chatting while having a cup of tea, and quickly it was clear that Arian was a sharp woman since she immediately noticed Lily was not a student of Diam Academy. However, Arian was not sharp enough to notice that Lily was not a woman at all, so when Ray changed back to his normal voice, he had been altering his voice using sorcery so it sounded more girly. She was very surprised. In fact, she was so astonished that she asked him to change his voice back to a girly one because she just couldn't withstand seeing him in girl clothes while talking with a male voice. Afterward, she asked him to spar with her and he accepted, so they both began to fight with Tiana as a witness. The battle was tough, but Arian ended up winning after using sorcery to disarm Ray. Finally, it was then when Ray revealed that he was friends with Amelia. After hearing that, Arian showed that she had missed Amelia greatly, and that was looking forward to seeing her at the tournament. Ray returned home, still disguised as Lily, and encountered Maria, Rebecca's younger sister, who was still deciding whether to attend the academy or not. But after that encounter, and especially thanks to Ray's behavior towards her, she ended up developing a crush on Lily, so she made up her mind to attend the academy. I would bet my house that our worthless scumbag protagonist didn't realize Maria developed a crush on him. Ray then met with Amelia, Alyssa, and Clarice, and they all went nuts after seeing him in girl clothes while talking with his normal voice. I am beginning to think that Ray's common sense sometimes just turns off. Some time later, Ray took his friends to meet Lydia. Of course, they were all nervous and excited since they were about to meet Ray's master. Shortly after, they arrived at her home and Lydia introduced herself to each one of them. She even noticed how big were Evie's muscles and how big was Alyssa's chest. Of course, Alyssa didn't miss the chance to ask for an autograph from her idol and was extremely happy once Lydia signed her book. The master then greeted Clarice, who bit her tongue while saying her name, and told her that if she wanted to be a hunter she could do it despite being a noble. She even took out her hunter's license to prove that she was a Platinum 1, which boosted Clarice's confidence. Finally, when it was Amelia's turn, Lydia insisted on talking to her privately. Once they were alone, Ray's master told Amelia that she knew she was hiding a secret, which had Ray worried about her, and assured her Ray could be trusted should she ever tell him the truth. In fact, she even added that she had insisted on him enrolling in the academy so he could learn to understand the human heart and make friends there as well. That was why she was happy in that moment, because Ray being worried about her meant that he had learned to feel the change in other people's emotions. On the other hand, Lydia's maid, Carla, told Ray that the Grim Reaper, an assassination squad from Avil Empire, might infiltrate the tournament for easy access to all the attending nobles, and asked him to pay attention to that since he was a member of the committee. Back at the academy, Ray offered Amelia a chance to graduate boot camp if she cut the target on his chest in a duel, though the result was not shown. Time passed and the tournament arrived, with Amelia reaching the finals of the amateur group with ease. Moreover, Albert reached the semi-finals, and in his battle against Arian, he demonstrated his exceptional skills and bravery despite being defeated, meaning Arian would face Amelia in the finals. In the meantime, Ray was walking in a hallway while a Grim Reaper assassin followed him in secret. Ray suddenly felt the killing intent of the assassin, but when he turned around the assassin had vanished, although it left a suspicious substance on the floor. Immediately thereafter, the Environmental Research Club's president Rex appeared and took him to a secret meeting with Lydia, Carol, and Abby. There Ray learned of the Hale tribe, Imperial intelligence gatherers, of whom Lydia's maid, Carla, was a member, as well as Rex, Carla's little brother who had dealt with the assassin. But to be honest, the best part of the meeting was to see Carol's and Lydia's bickering. It made us crystal clear that Ray's master didn't like the other sorcerer, especially when the fight escalated to the point where Lydia attacked Carol with her ice blades. Back to serious matters, Ray was asked to prevent the assassination of noble students alongside Rex. The tournament went on and Rebecca managed to reach the finals of the main group. Also, Ray took notice of Lucas Forst, a strong swordsman from Mercross Academy who set a new record after defeating his opponent in only 2 seconds. Afterward, Clarice and Alyssa told Ray that Amelia had been isolating herself and that they hadn't been capable of reaching her. That night, Arian was training when her dad and her little sister met her to wish her the best for the next day in the tournament. Back with Ray, Evie told him to go cheer Amelia and he decided to go. Once he got to her room, he begged her to let him reach her heart, to which Amelia replied by opening the door of her room and letting him go inside. Once they were alone inside, Amelia revealed to him that the pressure of maintaining a facade to behave following her family's noble standards plus feelings of inferiority had caused suicidal thoughts and a certainty that she would never surpass Arian. After hearing that stupid excuse, Ray assured her that support from friends was all she needed. At that moment, a short flashback began and it revealed that Amelia had in fact graduated boot camp by destroying Ray's target. Back to the present, she got motivated and asked Ray to stay with her while she fell asleep, although he ended up staying all night with her. And no, nothing happened on cameras, but behind them I don't know.
City boy! City boy!
The next morning, while Amelia and Arian began their match, Grim Reaper kidnapped Clarice and 8 other students. Once Ray was informed of that, he tracked them under the arena, and after finding them, the assassins appeared, so he decided to release his Chronos lock, capturing the assassins in ice and saving everyone. Right after, Rex showed up and Ray told him to take care of the rest while he princess carried Clarice back to the arena. Back to the tournament, Amelia got the upper hand after triggering a power-up which made Carol realize that Ray had used an anti-material field while training Amelia. Arian had to make a lot of effort to evade the others' attacks since Amelia was able to create multiple butterflies with her sorcery, and those butterflies caused big explosions upon contact. Of course, Arian was not a pushover and she displayed all her agility to avoid the explosions as best as she could. But in the end, she realized it wouldn't be enough, so she decided to trigger another power-up by unleashing all her power and releasing his true origin. Once she did that, her speed increased by leaps and bounds and the tides changed. Right after, Arian began to crush Amelia to the point of almost knocking her out. However, when it seemed that the battle was over, Ray screamed to Amelia that she should stand up, and that instantly made her capable of evolving a new spell she named Butterfly Effect. After that power-up, it looked like the tides were about to change again, especially after Amelia claimed that she had become too strong for Arian to even touch her. The fight continued and Arian quickly found out that every time she got close to Amelia she was teleported away instead. Apparently, the butterflies at that moment had acquired a new effect so they could either generate an explosion or teleport someone upon contact. Shortly after, Carol confirmed the spell was an original unique to Amelia's engram that manipulated causality so that no matter where Arian moved, Amelia could cause her to move somewhere else. Arian of course didn't surrender and kept attacking, trying to find an opening, and eventually she realized that Amelia's body apparently couldn't handle her new powers since she had begun to nosebleed and to cough blood. After seeing that, Ray confirmed that Amelia could risk overheat if she used the spell too long. Amelia seemed to be aware of that fact too, so she decided to end the battle with her next attack, which Arian decided to face head-on. Shortly after, Amelia ended up winning the match and both she and Arian had a very heartfelt talk. Arian acknowledged that Amelia had become stronger and had defeated her and told her that she could be honest and feel proud of herself. Amelia then replied that she had been able to accomplish that thanks to her friends and especially Ray. However, she also added that the person who had made her stronger had been none other than Arian. It was because Arian was at an unachievable place that she wanted to get better. Arian then said that it had been the same for her. She had realized that Amelia had become annoyed at her own existence and the existence of nobles, so Arian tried her best to become her example. In the end, both friends ended up tearfully reconciling. Afterward, Amelia's father and Arian's father met and teased each other, but in the end, they both agreed that it was a good thing for their daughters to be both childhood friends and rivals. At the infirmary, Ray met with Amelia and praised her for her discovery of an original spell, while assuring her that she had been capable of doing that not because of her talent, but because of her hard work, since Origin was not a stage you could achieve without working hard. She then realized that if she hadn't known Ray, she might still be a caged bird who kept limiting herself due to her permanent lack of confidence. In fact, later when she and her friends were heading towards the arena to see the finals of the main tournament, she proclaimed that she was no longer in a cage known as nobility, and that she wanted to live with everyone in that world together. Back in the tournament, in the finals of the main group, Rebecca faced Lucas, but she ended up losing in a matter of seconds, which surprised everybody, especially Rebecca. Shortly after, Lucas left the arena and met Ray, who confirmed that Lucas had inherited the title of Deathblade Sorcerer, just as Ray inherited the title of Iceblade Sorcerer. Lucas praised him for realizing that and acknowledged the other's powers. In fact, Lucas then revealed that he intended to defeat Ray to prove that the strongest sorcerer was Deathblade. But before, he wanted Ray to recover his former strength by curing his overheat, since he wanted to battle the other at his peak. Meanwhile, Carol cast a powerful charm spell on the assassins that turned them into mere puppets, showing why she was called the Charming Sorcerer. Unfortunately, the other part had prepared in advance for a situation like that, and once Carol tried to interrogate the captured assassins, they were all forced to commit suicide with anti-interrogation devices planted in their skulls. With the tournament over, the next event was the cultural festival. At Amelia's insistence, Ray suggested their class run a maid cafe, as Amelia was a secret maid enthusiast. At first, the idea was rejected by the noble girls, furious at the suggestion they role-played as servants, but they ended up agreeing after seeing Carol model a risque maid outfit. Unfortunately, once the meeting was over, Dina met with both Ray and Amelia and informed them that Rebecca had unexpectedly become engaged. Rebecca's father and Evan signed a contract so that could the latter become Rebecca's fiancé. But the former was clearly disturbed while signing it, so it seemed that he was being forced or something like that. Afterward, we could see some high-ranking eugenics members killing a sorcerer. One of them was called Glutton, and he seemed to eat the sorcerer's energy while the other was in charge of collecting the sorcerer's brain. Then, they both discussed that it had been determined that Rebecca was the vessel their organization had been looking for, which had been confirmed during the Sorcery Swordsman tournament. By the way, the one in charge of collecting the sorcerer's brain seemed to have a personal vendetta that somehow related to Rebecca. As for the student council president, she was suffering with magic in her eyes that made them bleed. Ray went to talk to Rebecca about her engagement, but she acted normal and didn't reveal anything to make him suspect that something was out of place. Later that day, Amelia and Elise were discussing the designs of the maid costumes, and somehow the conversation ended up with Amelia and Ray almost forcing Elise to wear one of the costumes, which embarrassed the half-elf girl because it was too revealing, especially in the chest area. Not to mention that the skirt was very short. Some time later, Ray's class was finishing the preparations for the festival, and everybody was very fired up since all the ladies were excited about the celebration and all the guys were looking forward to seeing the ladies wearing maid costumes, especially when Ray informed them that Alyssa was going to wear one. After all, as they kept saying over and over again, no guy in that world didn't like maids. Afterward, Ray went to the student council to submit the request for his class-maid cafe, and he noticed that the only members present were Dina and Rebecca. When he asked why was that, Dina told him that a student named Cornea had turned the student council against Rebecca since Rebecca's fiancé, Evan Bernstein, was previously Cornea's fiancé. After hearing that, Ray offered them his help, which touched both of them. Once Ray left the place, Dina went after him and asked Ray to investigate Evan, whose motives were suspicious. Well, the whole engagement seemed fishy, especially considering the difference in status between Rebecca and Evan. Ray went to Lydia's house to ask for her help, and his master agreed that the engagement was unusual, and sent Carla to investigate, to which the maid replied that she would be delivering results in 1 week. By the way, Lydia was very unhappy Ray had been infected by Amelia's maid fetish during preparation for the maid cafe. And Ray, oblivious to that, not only praised Carla because she looked amazing as a maid, but also called her master a gorilla when she said that she would also look pretty, she should wear a maid costume. Back with Rebecca, she continued to bleed from her eyes and additionally had begun to have strange dreams of Ray during the war. Her sister Maria questioned if she was happy marrying Evan, but Rebecca only confirmed it was her duty. Worried, Maria protested the engagement to their parents but was ignored, which made her throw a tantrum at them since she had always felt her parents only liked Rebecca since Maria looked different due to her white hair and didn't follow the proper etiquette. Time passed and Ray finally met Evan, who looked indeed suspicious. Shortly after, Ray had a meeting with Lydia, Abby, Carol, Carla, and Rex where the maid told them that she had discovered the Bernstein family had not been seen in years and their mansion had been abandoned. She thus suspected the Bernsteins, including Evan, were dead, and the current Evan was a disguised eugenics member known as the Sorcery Eye Collector, who undoubtedly wanted Rebecca's eyes for his collection. Back with the high-ranking eugenics, they said they were looking forward to the moment when Rebecca awoke as the saint, because after that the door to Akasha would be opened. Finally, the one in charge of collecting brains took off his mask, revealing he was Evan. Rebecca was crying in her bedroom while remembering a conversation she had had with Evan where he revealed to her that her father, Bruno, had made a deal with him to marry her in exchange for replacing the Rose family as the highest nobility family. However, that was not all, because Evan also threatened her with hurting Maria to force her to comply. Afterward, Rebecca had another dream about Ray's past. The next day, Maria met with Ray and asked him to protect her sister, to which the other replied by assuring her that he would protect Rebecca. And since he was a dense womanizer, he also charmed her and they both ended up hugging each other. Unfortunately, that was seen by Rebecca, and since she couldn't hear their conversation, she began to feel jealous, although she was aware that they weren't doing anything wrong. Not to mention that she was in no position to complain. That night, Ray told Evie about the story of the novel he was reading. It was a novel written by Luna Edel, and Ray praised the author a lot. The story revolved around a young demon girl and a human teenager and how they interacted with each other after they met. But because the human boy wanted to obtain the demon's power, they ended up separated. Although Ray hadn't finished the book, so he hoped they could have a happy ending. time passed and Rebecca and Ray met in their dreams, causing Ray's eyes to also bleed. The next day, Rebecca almost asked Ray about the war but stopped because the plot needed that to remain untold. Well, to be precise, she even began to ask the question and even mentioned the Far East, and after the dream they both shared. A human being with a normal brain would have put 2 and 2 together, but we are talking about Ray, so he's a worthless case. The culture festival began and Ray helped at the maid cafe by disguising himself as Lily to be another maid, which caused several cases of nosebleeds among men and women, especially Maria, whose crush got even stronger. By the way, Arian and her sister also went to the maid cafe, and Arian was overwhelmed by the whole experience of meeting Lily at her prime. Even Amelia had to admit defeat because Lily was way more charming than her. Later, Ray helped Rebecca enjoy the festival and she almost asked him to go with her to enjoy the end of festival fireworks, but didn't because again this is a harem anime, so no waifu can be established as an official lover until the epilogue. By the evening, a strange woman met with Maria and warned her that Rebecca would die very soon. Shortly after, Ray received similar news from all the girls who had a plan for Ray to save her. In fact, Rebecca's father, Bruno, suddenly appeared and asked him to save her daughter. That night, Rebecca had some visions of what was about to happen and began to cry out loud, which was heard by Maria, who also ended up crying. The next day, Rebecca asked Ray to stop worrying about her and to take care of Maria instead. After all, Rebecca was engaged and would have to leave her family. It is insane how this entire arc is based on one single person refusing to tell the truth and ask for help. Some time later, Evan kidnapped Rebecca to begin her awakening, and Maria said farewell to Lily in a very ominous way that made Ray follow her, suspecting something bad was about to happen. And, of course, he didn't say anything to Amelia and the rest. But fortunately, in that case, Evie had an idea of what was happening and quickly told Amelia, Alyssa, and Albert about it. Evan took Rebecca to an isolated castle that was guarded by Glutton, another high-ranking eugenics, and a lot of monsters. Shortly after, Ray arrived and began to fight the monsters, but when he was about to get hit, Amelia, Evie, Clarice, Alyssa, and Albert showed up to help him. A flashback then started and we could see the moment when Bruno revealed their family was cursed. Every few generations a child was born as something called a Kreutz. In the current generation, Rebecca had inherited that power, but unless she gained control of her sorcery eye, she would die before she turned 20 years old. Glutton and the other high-ranking eugenics arrived at the castle where Rebecca had been taken and saw that not only Evan but also Maria were there. However, it was soon revealed that the other high-ranking eugenics was the real Evan who had kidnapped Rebecca. Who was engaged to her and who had signed the contract with her father was Lyslot Eden, the fabrication sorcerer. Evan was not surprised to see the woman there, as if he had been expecting that. In fact, he quickly attacked while saying that he was going to kill her to ascend to Akasha afterward. However, Lyslot overpowered him with ease and sent him to another dimension. She then told Maria that since she was there she would assume that she already had the resolve to do what she should, to which the other replied that she did. Right after, Lyslot added that Maria should leave everything to Ray, who immediately showed up. Lyslot then introduced herself to Ray, who, after hearing her title, assumed that she had planned everything. The fabrication sorcerer didn't confirm that but said that since Lydia and her group were starting to be aware of what she was doing, she needed to keep things short. So she explained to him that she was planning to make Rebecca go through overheat. Then she hoped he could help her seal it since he had experience using the spell called Chronos Lock. Besides, they both resonated with each other, which explained why they could connect through their dreams. Right after, she went to the dimension where she had sent Evan, and Ray began his battle against Glutton. Lyslot faced Evan, who said that catching up to her was no longer important, and immediately thereafter he used the same device the instructor had used in her battler against Ray. Unfortunately for him, even with that boost, he ended up suffering a crushing defeat. He then asked her if that was the power of the strongest sorcerer, to which she replied that the strongest sorcerer and the only one deserving to rule the world was Ray. Meanwhile, Ray's friends managed to kill all the monsters and began to praise each other because they had all gotten stronger. Sadly, those monsters began to revive and mutate, which terrified them since they were already exhausted. Fortunately, at that moment, Lydia, Carla, Abby, and Carol saved them and finished those monsters off with a showcase that took Ray's friends' breath away. Back with Ray, things were not looking good for him since Glutton had the upper hand while our protagonist was beginning to suffer the penalty of having unsealed his powers. And to make things worse, Glutton decided to unleash his full power to kill the Iceblade sorcerer. However, at that moment, Ray decided to unlock his ultimate power, Pandora, to finally defeat Glutton by freezing him in red ice. Afterward, Ray sealed his powers back and collapsed. Once the battle was over, a quarrel between Maria and Rebecca began because Maria kept provoking the other by telling her that Ray had ended up that way because Rebecca hadn't told the truth. Which was true, by the way. In the end, Rebecca finally snapped and told Maria that she hated her rebellious behavior. Unfortunately, that triggered Rebecca's overheat. At that moment, Ray woke up and saw how Lyslot had appeared along with the dead Evan. Our protagonist and the fabrication sorcerer then had a brief talk where Ray couldn't help but see Lyslot and Evan as the main characters of the novel he was reading. Afterward, Lydia and her group, along with Ray's friends, arrived at the castle, and our protagonist used Chrono's lock to shut off Rebecca's overheat, thus saving her life. Later that night, Rex informed Rebecca's father that Ray had saved both of his daughters, and the other asked him to thank the Iceblade sorcerer for him. In the meantime, while waiting for Ray to watch some fireworks, Rebecca and Amelia had a brief talk and ended up agreeing to compete for Ray's love. The next day, Ray visited the grave of Howard, the father figure who died during the war, but that time he did it with his friends tagging along. Some time later, Arian arrived to invite Ray to join her in the magic wars, much to his shock. Somewhere else, a little girl easily defeated a huge monster and then began to wonder when his big brother would return. Could she be Ray's little sister? Watch this next video. Don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe, and let me know what you think about this anime on the comments. Till the next my recap followers.